Welcome back to Strategy Gaming Dojo, where we find, learn, and play one more turn of the great strategy games. Now, this is the second attempt to do this episode because of Spectrum Cable, and I have talked about that before. It is a piece of work, but I'm not going to focus on that. I'm going to focus on what we're doing today, and that is setting up Pearl Harbor. Now, we're still working on turn 6 here. I've decided to start going through some of these places one by one. One very important place, some may argue for the Allied side, the most important place, is Pearl Harbor. And we have not done a lot with Pearl Harbor yet, and that is because we don't really know where the main Japanese task force is. And it could be, up in here, probably not. It's probably already started to head back west here, but we don't know where it is. We looked at the signal intelligence report. In the first go around, I was only on for about 5 minutes. You didn't miss much. So I'm just re-recording this whole episode and going live again. We looked at this earlier at the signal intelligence. There's nothing solid here that would give us any indication where that main Japanese task force might be. I was hoping that maybe there were rumors out there that are spies, that someone embedded within the Japanese Defense Ministry or something had figured out some information, or there was some radio chatter. There was none, so that is not giving us any clues. But being in turn 6 as we are, if you figure that turn 1, the task force was here, we did know that they were approximately moving out this way by turn 2. By turn 6, you got to expect, by the least, they're here. They may be heading up to Midway, which is far enough away for our purposes, what we're talking about here, or they may be heading over here to Wake. This is actually my educated guess of where they may be going, because they are attempting to take Wake with a very small force here. Now, of course, they would not need the main Japanese task force to take Wake Island, but often the game will send, the AI will send their, this task force over to Wake just to add a little air support. They'll bomb the living heck out of us there on Wake Island, and unfortunately our guys, there's not a whole lot we can do with them. We do have a couple of subs out here. Maybe we can get a lucky shot in on a major Japanese asset. We'll see. Now at Pearl Harbor, one thing that we have, and I had started to talk about, are a lot of destroyers. There are a bunch of destroyers already here. Oh, I've got the ship repair here. Look at all of these destroyers we have here. Now, these destroyers are not the good ones. And what do I mean by that? Well, in 3 turns, we are going to be getting, and we can go up here to the intelligence report, and we can see ship availability. We will search that, ETA, flip it, there we go, ETA the other way. We'll go up here. In 3 days, we will be getting the Sims class here, DD Sims, Hughes, Anderson, Hammond. It sounds like a softball team. Let's go here and look, and they have radar. All right, if we look at our destroyers here at Pearl Harbor, oh, and also those new ones have a 4 rating on anti-sub. If we look at the ones at Pearl, they do not have radar, and they're a 2 anti-sub. Some of them actually have a little better anti-aircraft than the new ones we'll be getting, but I take those new ones that we get with the radar, and I put them with our carriers. I always like to have whatever the latest and greatest destroyer class that we have out there as the Allies with our carriers. Obviously, your carriers are all important. Early in the game, middle of the game, late in the game, that is how you project power. At this early stage, of course, there's not a lot we're going to be doing with them offensively. They're kind of just going to be sitting here at Pearl Harbor. And so even with those nice new destroyers, sometimes we can run some side missions with them because they won't really be escorting the carrier anyway. They're all going to kind of sit here for a few months at least before we start moving those carrier pieces around. But when we do, we would like the destroyers that have the radar on them to move with our carriers. And so we will be bringing them. They're coming through the Panama Canal. They're coming from the East Coast through the Panama Canal. We'll bring them straight out to Pearl Harbor here. Well, actually, we may send a couple of them up to San Diego or LA to escort something to Pearl Harbor. But in the big picture, yes, David. Hey, David, how's it going? Hey, Bayard, what's going on? David, Spectrum Cable, what can I say? I've spoken enough on that company, but we're operational now. Hopefully, you guys can see me well. We're streaming at high quality here. But yes, we had a little problem. Anytime there's a little wind, who knows? You know, you would think in California, the home of high technology, you would have decent cable. We even have the premium, you know, I have the premium service, everything else. It just doesn't matter. Anyway, enough about that. You guys don't want to hear about my problems. So anyway, we have these other destroyers sitting here. We will be using them to escort things into Pearl Harbor here. We will be using them to run all kinds of ASW around Pearl Harbor, around the Hawaiian Islands. We will also send some back to LA and San Francisco. So we'll try to find kind of our worst ones, as long as they have a 2 ASW, because all of these do. But we'll take the slowest ones and send them back to San Francisco, LA, San Diego, and have them run ASW there. We may send some down to our Iron Fence, you know, maybe get one down to Christmas, get one to Palmyra, just places where ships are going to be coming in and out. We like to have, you know, those destroyers running ASW, at least give some of those transports or cargo ships a chance. You know, if there is submarine activity there, they may get a shot off, but they may pay for it as well. And every Japanese sub that we can take out early is a real boon, because it's very hard for the Japanese to replace those. And if you can start whittling away at their submarine force, it's going to be very good. You know, as the allied player, that's what you want. Now, on the first stream, if you were around for that 5 minutes, I had started to go through the ships that are at Pearl Harbor. And unfortunately, the big capital ships that are here, for the most part, are sitting in repair. And so I won't go through those again, other than to say, let's bring up the screen and just kind of talk about the big general thing I was talking about, which is, what do we have in the shipyard? Well, we have the Nevada in there, okay, 166 days. We have the California in there, 1,200 days, okay? So, you know, you're talking 3 to 4 years here. Now, this is taking up quite a bit of space. It's a 32,000 ton battleship. We're not going to scuttle her, you know, or we don't want to lose her, as she's worth a lot of points. And who knows, in 1944 or early 45, we may need the California. Seems doubtful, but it's possible. And so we're going to just try to repair her enough to send her back to the shipyard at San Francisco. 76 float. I don't want to take that chance. I would rather get down to a 50 or less, and then we'll try to get her back, you know, to San Francisco, so she's not clogging up the repair yard here at Pearl Harbor, which is an active repair yard, right? At San Francisco, you can have all the capacity in the world, but really you shouldn't have too much there, except for things like this, that you send back, things that have been damaged out here in the Pacific, and you want to get them, you know, kind of away from these active repair yards where we really need them to be repairing things and getting things, you know, put back and floated back out on the water as fast as possible. So then we talked about the Tennessee, the Pennsylvania, the Maryland. These are all just 17, 14, 15 days away, okay? And we're doing those all pier side, because even though they're battleships, they're, you know, important capital ships, you know, waiting 17 days is just not a big deal. We don't need these for anything right now. We're not doing any offensive operations. We're not going to be shelling any islands at the moment, or bombarding any islands at the moment, which battleships are good, very good at. So, you know, whether it takes 15 days or 22 days, or that's why we're just leaving them at the pier side, because ultimately, you know, 15 to 20 days difference isn't a big deal on these. We also have some light cruisers that are in here, and they will be ready in not too long. Some destroyers, and they're in the shipyard. They're very light, relatively speaking, and so, no problem sticking some destroyers in the shipyard. They're not taking up much space, and so we might as well. We need all of those we can get. David's asking, how many destroyers do you put in an ASW task force? Bayard has some good input, as always. Maximum of four. I wouldn't put only one ship in, because if that ship is hit by a sub, at least the other gets to counterattack. Very good point. I like to usually do them in pairs of two. Now, if you have something really, really important and you find yourself with a lot of destroyers, which we do out here at Pearl Harbor, you could do four, but always kind of, have them in pairs. I think that's good advice, Bayard, and for the reason that Bayard suggests, which is you're going to be playing this cat and mouse game with the Japanese subs. Sometimes the Japanese sub's going to get the better of you. You're going to lose a destroyer. It's not the end of the world. Destroyers aren't worth that many points. It's 6. The bigger problem, of course, is if they're with a task force. Now you maybe don't have that ASW protection, but you can kind of alleviate that problem by having that second destroyer there. So now it's been sighted. Maybe the Japanese subs surprise the task force, whether they be, just by themselves or with cargo ships, whatever the case may be, transport ships. And so maybe you get surprised and you lose a destroyer, but that other destroyer can then counterattack, and maybe you can clear out a sub. You would gladly trade one allied destroyer for one Japanese sub every day of the week. And so if you have them going in pairs, Bayard says the topic of ship upgrades and conversions would be nice to look at soon. I agree. We've got those AKEs that are out in Australia that we're currently converting. And so we'll go look at those when those are ready to go, or maybe a turn or two in advance. I think those take 12 days, and so we'll go look at those in probably about 4 or 5 days more in that turn, and we'll just talk about conversions. It's not something that I really covered that much in the tutorial. We touched upon it. I said, hey, you can do this, but we didn't really discuss the ins and outs of it or why necessarily you need it to be done. I think I did mention that you don't have a lot of those tenders, especially over near Australia, or just as the Allies in general. You don't have a lot of those kind of tenders at the start. So every cargo ship you could turn into an ammunition tender. It could be very helpful. So we will definitely cover that, Bayard. Okay, so let's continue going down these ships that we were looking at. And we talked about the Pennsylvania, the Tennessee, the West Virginia. I also, when we started out, was talking about the float planes that are there on each of those ships. We're training them ASW, and I said previously, it's ASW or naval search. That's really what those float planes are for. If these, well, the battleships maybe aren't a good example. You don't usually mix and match battleships with carriers. You would, do them as two different task forces. But in a battleship task force, if you do not have carriers close, for instance, and you're going across with transports, and it's just a battleship task force that's escorting them along the way. On the battleships, the heavy cruisers, the light cruisers, you have float planes. And what are they good for? They're good for naval searching, making sure you're not getting ready to run into another task force. And they're good at ASW. Well, I say they're good at it. That's what they're used for, or what they should be used for. That's their purpose, is to do those two things. They're not really attack craft. You're not using those airplanes offensively necessarily. Now, of course, if it spots a sub, it may want to do something about it. A sub's a little different kind of idea, but if it spots a big Japanese task force with a lot of anti-aircraft capability, it's not going to just go fly in there and start dropping bombs or something. It's really just a spot. They're spotters. And so we're training all of those ASW right now, and hopefully by the time these ships are repaired, we have some really nice ASW pilots that are well trained and trained up out there. So then we have the Astoria, Chester, Chicago, Indianapolis. All of these are cruisers. And what I'm going to do is go through and really make all of these orange. And why? Because we're not going to be moving our capital ships like cruisers. We're not going to be moving those out from being at anchor in Pearl Harbor anytime soon. And when we do, we will know it and we will go look at this. There's no reason to look at them every turn. MWCW 709. That sounds impersonal. How you doing? How you doing? Thanks for stopping by. So we're not going to really be doing much with those. One thing I would like to do though, and I'm not going to make you sit through it, but I will be doing it, is all of our active and repaired ships. So here's our active ships, all of our ships under repair and our repair ships. I'm going to make sure now that we know the Japanese task force is probably not around Pearl Harbor. I'm going to make sure all of their air units are training. And you may say, well, don't we have most of them training? We do, but we did not have all of them training because we did want to get some aircraft up just in case. And you see, train, I've got this at 100% train. And that should be the case for almost all of them. But there are a few that we were running ASW patrol, the Northampton, for instance. It's along here somewhere. I'm not going to go look for every last ship while we're on the line right now. But for instance, the Northampton, we have, and that's a what? That's a regular cruiser or heavy cruiser. Well, I just said we're not going to go look for everyone, but we might as well look for some of them. Let's make sure these are all sorted. Where's the Northampton? Is it in a task force? Could be. And it is. Ah, that's why we have these planes up. Okay. Hey, I will give you a warning here. I don't know if I've ever, I know I did mention this, but it was very briefly in one of the tutorials. When a ship is at dock and you've got planes on it, so take the carrier, for instance, right? You are not running a full complement of sorties off that carrier when it's in port. I believe it's 50%. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. I know that it's a percentage. Hey Bayard, I turned on the moderator, Streamlabs moderator, and it seems that it deleted Bayard's message for being too long. Sorry about that, just, I guess you're gonna have to break it up into 2 or 3. That's really funny. Of course, I just didn't want somebody sending some kind of illicit spam, but it has now caught Bayard in its net. Oh, so anyway, back to the point. If you have ships at port that are flying missions, air missions off of them, they will not run at 100%. So don't think that, oh gosh, I've got these fighters up in cap, and I've got 25 planes, they're all participating. I do believe, and I'll check and make sure, but I'm 99% sure, it runs at 50%. So you're only going to be running half the sorties when you have a ship that is in port, okay? So just keep that in mind. Yeah, and Bayard brings up that point, which is transfer. You can transfer them off of the ships, and I will go through and do all of that offline. I'm not going to make you sit through me doing every one of these ships and moving. I should have done this probably on turn 1. It's not the end of the world. Some things, you just pass on in one turn and you just go back, in the future and do it again. Now we've got more down here. Light cruisers, CLs, okay, fine, cool. We've got all of those doing all of their air missions or training naval search. Once we get down to the light carriers, for the most part, the CL Detroit is doing some ASW work on its planes. But the Helena, the Honolulu, the Phoenix, the planes, the float planes coming off of that, the Seagulls, should be doing naval search, and I will make sure that I go back. And to the extent that any ship is being repaired or is back in the shipyard, of course, take those squadrons off and put them at the air base for now, at the airfield, and then they will be running, their full complement of training, and you could also put them up in the air if you need to, if you need them for some reason. Okay, then we get down to the Enterprise and the Lexington. Now, let's go look at our carriers. We haven't looked at them since last turn. I always look at the carriers every turn. Now, you may remember we have the Saratoga coming here to Pearl Harbor. All of these destroyers are not the good ones. They only have 2 ASW, and because of that, because we don't have a really nice ASW presence yet around Hawaii, I just slowed it down. I slowed the Saratoga down. Saratoga's kind of pulling up here and is going to wait until we get a lot of these destroyers deployed around Hawaii. We're going to make, a ring around Hawaii of ASW everywhere that we can, with two destroyer task forces that we'll put out here running ASW. Usually when I do that, I'll just say, patrol around this point, patrol around this point, this point. I don't go and set every leg. It would just take way too long. Then we have the Enterprise and the Lexington. So here's the Enterprise, all right, and we've got quite a few ships here. We've got the fast destroyers. These are 35 knots. That's kind of our max right now that we have. They also have the better endurances, up to 8,000 almost. So, the Dunlap really doesn't fit. It doesn't have as good of an endurance, but it does have the same speed. Oh, you see here, we do have some at 36 knots. Okay, great. And so the Enterprise is just sitting here, and that's what the Enterprise is going to be doing for the foreseeable future. Now, we do have the Lexington down here somewhere. Yep, the Lexington hightailed it south because we did not know where the Japanese were at that point. We didn't know where their main task force was. We had to go full speed for a while. As you see, we did this pretty close on the fuel, 82 to get us back to Pearl. We've got 115 capacity, or 115 left, I should say. And so, yeah, so we're going to bring it back that way. I did want to maybe change this waypoint a little bit. We can clear these waypoints, fine. Let's have this go more this way. I don't want to bring it north at all. I don't see any purpose in doing that. So let's get it kind of evened up here. Christmas. I mean, this is really being extra cautious, but we'll bring it here first. Still looking good on the fuel. Okay, great. So we're going to bring it here and then north. All right. I usually like to go around the back side of the island, just because I whatever. Maybe I don't know if this is true or not. Maybe it's just experience. Maybe it's my subconscious telling me that I've lost ships this way before. But I feel like there's more Japanese sub activity on the western portion here, which is, I mean, it's closer to Japan just by a few hexes. So I guess maybe that would make sense. I don't know if it's a big deal, but I always like to bring it around the backside. Let's make sure that we have enough. Yep, we've got plenty of fuel to get there. That's great. So we're just mission speeding it here and around, and then we'll have all 3 carriers back here at Pearl Harbor. Fingers crossed that they all make it back. Okay, so those are our carriers. Let's make sure that all of the air units on the Lexington are doing what they should be doing. We've got it up at 60 cap. Let's look at the fatigue. Fatigue's getting a little high. It's at 18. I don't like it to be that high, so let's pop that down to 50. It doesn't make a huge difference, but anything over 50 I feel like adds to fatigue. 50 kind of keeps it the same and starts to dissipate it. Down here where we are, I think we could even put it on 40. Now we could do the math of 22 planes running 40 cap, exactly what that is, but I'm not going to bore you with that. So let's put that at 40, unless we get some kind of sighting on the Japanese. Search 30, that's fine. Their fatigue's only at 3. We could even pop that up to 40. It's running that to the northwest. We've got 18 planes. Why don't we whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Sorry. Shoot. Okay, so we're running it to the backside here with those. Oh, crap. Crap. Hold on. That's not what I wanted to happen. So now we've reset this. Let's get out of here. Let's do 40. Let's reset the arc, and we'll do it random. I do think that maybe, running it back this way does make some sense, but we've got 18 planes. They should be able to do a nice random arc. We also have a whole nother squadron of these, so this is fine. We'll just do a current, an arc random, so they're all over the place. Those were the VS2 Dauntlesses. This is VB2 Dauntless, 18. Now we have those. Where are those going? Okay, they were going to the north and the east. Great. Okay, so we'll take that off as well. Let's reset the arc to 0, and we'll just have them do random as well. We'll bump that up to 40. They have no fatigue problems. What's their... Oh, we've got really nice experience and morale on these guys. That's great. Then let's look at the Devastators. The Devastators are doing naval attack right now. They do have torpedoes. That's nice. There are 12 of them. We'll just keep them on that. This is going to be commander selection. So if the commander feels there's something that these guys can run, great. We've got some escort craft here. So the main mission for these Buffaloes is escort. We also have the Vindicators on here. So the dive bombers. They are doing naval attack as well. Okay, I like this setup. This is fine. We've got them doing a little bit of training. Yeah, because they only have a 50 experience. We'll actually bump that up to a 20 while we go back to Pearl. Maybe even a 30? Okay, let's do 30. Why not? And so they will be training. Great. All right. Let's go see. So that's the Enterprise and the Lexington. Great. We will be checking on those every turn. So we will keep those green on our spreadsheet as we move down here. There's another green. Right. So the next thing on the spreadsheet, now that we've kind of dealt with some of those ships that were not necessarily at port or that were damaged, we'll go back and set the destroyers at the end. We'll also look at any other ships. I know that we have some oilers here. We have some cargo ships that we can get going. Some of those we'll send down to Palmyra, to Christmas, and to Pago early on. So those three, to the extent we can, we'll try to supply from Pearl Harbor. Now Pago, you're getting a little further away, and that could either come from Auckland or Australia if you wanted it to, but I like to do it from Pearl, have it come around Christmas in Palmyra, go to Pago, maybe even to Suva. So Suva is kind of the dividing line. Everything to the east of Suva, including maybe Suva, that's kind of half and half. I'd like to do from Pearl Harbor or maybe from the US West Coast, if that makes sense. Although generally, just looking at the big picture, I like to have everything from the West Coast for the most part that you're going to keep, that's not going all the way to Australia. Everything from the West Coast, go to Pearl Harbor first and just run this mission back and forth over and over, and then have a group of cargo and AKLs tankers, AOs, whatever the case may be, then run the stuff down here to Palmyra, Christmas. Is this Palmyra? No, I think this is Palmyra, Christmas, around the corner here, and then down to Pago, Suva, all right? And then everything to the west of Suva, I do from Australia or from New Zealand. All right, I think that that makes a lot of sense, or at least it does in my head. That's how I kind of keep it straight, what is going where. Back to Pearl we go. Here we go. Actually, we're going to Hilo. At Hilo, we are building forts, expanding ports, and expanding the airfield. We're doing a little bit of everything here at Hilo. They do have a base force. They do have an infantry unit with 37. That's all good. You just kind of don't want, you don't want the Japanese to jump up here, surprise you, and all of a sudden you don't have anything on this island and on the big island, and all of a sudden the Japanese have a base out here. That would be a disaster. So let's turn that red. We're good there. We're good for all of Hilo. Now you could buy out that Hilo LCU if you needed it for some reason. I don't think we'll ever need that or should need that. So we're going to turn that orange. But you could buy out that infantry unit here that I just looked at. The next is Johnston Island. I always find Johnston Island very interesting because the Japanese sometimes will really make a push for Johnston Island. And I think a smart Japanese player should make a push for Johnston Island. And I'll tell you why, is because they can supply it and they can really force a naval battle here early in the war. And the more battles that the Japanese can force you into early on, in my opinion, the better for the Japanese player. Why is that? Well, because they are never going to have a bigger advantage over you than they do right now. And so if they can get you sending task forces out here to try to spar with them, or you send a couple of carriers out here saying, well, I'm going to defend Johnston Island to the death, they could maybe bag one of your carriers. They could inflict a lot of damage on you here. And like I said, they're never going to have more of an advantage than they do right now. Maybe in a month or two, it's going to kind of stay a nice advantage for them into the spring, summer of 42. And so during that time, if they can get you in air battles, if they can get you in naval battles, they've got an advantage. They've got better equipment, better pilots. David asks, do you use normal range primarily for your planes? Not right at first. At first, I usually go out to the more extended range because you don't have as much equipment right at the start. After a month or two, or if you start to see that you're taking an inordinate number of operational losses, you can dial that back to normal. I will say, once all of your stuff as the Allies starts to come online, you can dial that back to normal because you have, then it becomes really specific. You say, oh, I'm running cap. Do I have a base that is 8 hexes away and my normal radius is 7, but my extended is 8, for instance? Or, you can, for circumstances like that, it becomes kind of specific instance by specific instance. But up until, I would say, January, February, when you really have stuff rolling off the production lines, I do extended, and then I'll switch everything back to normal. And again, if you're taking an inordinate number of operational losses, you want to start looking at your radiuses and how far you're sending things out. A few turns back, a few turns ago, you may remember we took like 13 operational losses, and I thought it was really strange at the time. And I thought, well, if we do this one more turn, I'm going to have to start looking at some radiuses. Well, that did seem to kind of be a one-off, and so I've got everything extended for now, or most things. Let's say 98%. Anyway, to Johnston Island again. I think the Japanese, if I ever play the Japanese, I will come for Johnston Island. You put so much pressure on the Allied player because they kind of have to respond a little bit. You're a little close to Pearl Harbor for their liking. You can even start to send things out here and say, do we give this another shot? As the Japanese player, where are you going to go? Where are you going to be offensive? Well, you can come down to Nomaya. You can threaten Australia, obviously. You can go after Port Moresby and Darwin. You can go through Java. But if you're going to be looking towards really crimping the Allied player, this is where I would come. And so I have a tendency to build up Johnston Island, maybe more than most. I think more than Cole. I've been looking at the spreadsheet out here at Johnston. We do not have a bunch going on here, but I will change that and I will do something different. Now, the AI, the Japanese AI, is unlikely to come take Johnston. They will go sometimes, do some search missions and see what you have there. And in my experience, if you are very weak here, they may make a play for it. But like I said, human Japanese players, I often see them come after Johnston. So anyway, just a little something in my experience, I guess you would say. So we have out here at Johnston Island, we're supposed to have an air group. And we do. Oh, okay. I was still looking at Hilo there. I was like, where's my air group? We're doing naval search. It is a very narrow range here, 260 to 270, but they've got such a nice, I said a narrow range, narrow radius, but they have such a good range that it actually ends up, covering a decent amount here. I would really like to get some more planes out here. What's their aviation? See, they've got 25 aviation support because we do have some engineers out here. We have this Johnston Defensive Battalion, okay, and it's the engineers that are giving us 25. That's really nice to have an engineering unit, gives you 25 aviation support. We will be getting more and more search aircraft out here going in every direction, right? So that we have a good idea. You see our subs that we have sent west. I think most of these are coming to the Marshall Islands and have moved to the west of Johnston Island. Okay, so we have that plane. It's doing 260, 270. That's great. It should be doing that, hopefully, till the end of the game. Build forts, expand port. We are doing that. What is Johnston's port level? It's only a 1. We'll probably try to take it all the way to a 3. Why not? We'll try to take the airfield up to... Oh, whoops, sorry. Expand... Oh, we're not doing the airfield right now. Well, interesting. We can really only take it one more level anyway. We'll leave that as is. It's really just going to be search aircraft out here that are giving us a heads up of any Japanese movement long before they would get to Pearl Harbor. So we'll keep that orange. That's fine. A size 2 or a size 3 isn't gonna break us. So we'll turn those orange. And now let's look at the ASW task force that is next. That's the AM Robin. It's the bird class of mine layer. Yeah, mine ships, mine layers, AM. But we turned that into an ASW and sent it to Palmyra. Did it make it down here? I believe it should have by now. And that is it. That is the Robin. We're going to make sure it's on React 1. And we should also set this up, now that it's here, with a patrol. So let's go see if we can make a different, or a decent patrol zone by operation of the game. And let's just, click on this hex and see what happens. Sometimes these get wonky, where it makes, like it makes this one line here. That doesn't, not going to do us any good. So let's reset this. If you are going to be going through and setting patrol zones, I recommend you just do it like this. I always, I have this up here as kind of a guideline, and I'll do something like there's 1, and then we'll do 2, and then we'll go to Palmyra itself for, gosh darn it, I hate when it does this. I don't want it to go straight across. Do I? Okay, let's try this again. Fine. Right click. Let's do one's fine. For two, let's put two like here. Anything coming would probably be coming from the northwest anyway. And then for three, okay, this is better. This is good. For three, we'll go back to Palmyra. And we can refuel. It shouldn't need that much fuel. When it does, it should do this, be able to do this 10 times before it would need any fuel. But I think the way the game works is it goes back and refuel. Oh, I always do a linger one just because, I don't know, coal always does linger one. Why wouldn't I? This just means it's going to linger there at Palmyra. So if you did have some kind of ASW, right in here, we've got it on reactive 1. I generally like to have these at 2. Let's do a max reactive 2. Now we are going to send a destroyer down here to probably join with the AM Robin, and then maybe 2 more destroyers to run even more ASW. This is a place you want to protect, obviously. It's kind of the start of what we're doing down here in the Pacific as we go around, Starbuck Island, Malden Island, and then, of course, here's Pago. So, this line right here, this is sort of the start of it. And you will be running a lot of cargo down from Pearl Harbor to here, or just to the east of here. Let's see. Okay, let's. That's really funny, Bayard. That the moderator got you. My goodness, what kind of crazy stuff were you saying? No, I think there's now a character limit of like 100. I just did that so somebody doesn't jump on here and start sending a bunch of emoticons or doing something crazy. That Robin will be running that, so I'm going to turn that to orange. It will be running that as long as we can. Oh, huh. Now Cole says wait and serve as an escort for cargo task forces with that AM Robin. Okay. I mean, it kind of doesn't matter. I mean, this is a 1. It's not good. It's not good at anything. It really does. So we'll just have it run this. We'll use something else. We'll use a destroyer, a cheap destroyer, to do these escorts, or destroyers, I should say. It's multiple. Kona, we're not doing anything. Kure Island, not doing anything. Lahaina, we are building forts and expanding the Air Force. Okay, so all those go red. Great, and down we go. Now, we've got, at Lahaina, we've got this base force, so let's go back up here to the islands. There is Lahaina, we've got this base force, great. We did turn replacements on. Now they're being delayed. Why is it saying replacements delayed? Because we are currently stockpiling everything we're producing, which is something we will have to deal with in the near future. But they're going to stay here. They're just hanging out. They're always going to be the base force at Lahaina. We also have an infantry unit here, which is 35. Okay, this is the 2nd 298th Infantry Battalion. They are also going to stay here. You want to have an infantry force. There's no garrison requirement back here, but you want to have something kind of on each island, some kind of ground force, just in case. You never know. So I'll turn those orange. And now at Lahaina, we have 6 ships in port. What have we got here? We've got the AG, which is an auxiliary miscellaneous. Okay, so it's a tender ship. That's nice. Actually, these are already filled up, it looks, for the most part. I mean, not all the way, but they've got their tender supplies anyway on here. We have 2 tankers. That's great. This one's got a really big capacity. The Gulf Hawk and the Gulf Land. We have a troop transport, and we've got a cargo vessel. Okay, fantastic. So the Arctic and the Vega, the 2 different, we'll just do these as a support task force. These 2 tenders Okay, if you were being ultra safe, split them up into separate task forces. You know what? Let's just do this the right way. I'm not going to hurry just because we're doing a live stream. Let's do the Arctic in one. We're not even going to name it. There's no reason to name it. We're going to send it over to Pearl Harbor right here. Now, the reason I say break them up, you know, if for by chance you run into um, a Japanese sub, you don't want them together. You would much rather they be apart. We're going to auto disband that when it gets into Pearl Harbor. So we'll add to the backlog of ships that are at anchor at Pearl Harbor. Let's do another sport, and we'll do the Vega. All right, done. And then we're just going to go Pearl Harbor, and its home port's going to be Pearl Harbor. Okay, and we'll disband that when it gets into port. All right, now we're going to have to look at those again at some point, but it's not going to be in the near future. However, I will keep those green just to make sure they get over to Pearl. We did have a submarine here, the Gudgeon, but we have already sent it on its way. It is one of those submarines that is now west of Johnston Island. Johnston Island, it's going to be doing a patrol in the Marshall Islands and hopefully bag a Japanese troop transport or some cargo, let's hope. We'll turn that orange. Its home base has been set to Pearl Harbor. This will be the main place that we bring any subs that are kind of north and east on the big strategic map here. So anything that's up here in the Pacific, the northern Pacific region, will be coming to Pearl Harbor as its sub base. I say anything, subs, any subs in that are going to the Japanese home islands. Now that Manila is under threat and will likely be taken in the not too distant future, we will be bringing all of those that are kind of northeast of the Philippines back to Pearl Harbor. Anything that are south or southwest of the Philippines will, at first, we'll bring to Surabaya. That's a good place to bring them. It's a good port. Eventually, we may bring them down to Darwin or Townsville, just depending on what they are. The Gulf Hawk and the Gulf Land, now Cole wants us to bring those over to Pearl Harbor as well. And then the Hugh Merchant as well. So every ship here we're just essentially taking over to Pearl Harbor. Is that all of them? Oh yeah, because we, now this is interesting. The one that we're missing, it's that Etolin. The Etolin. I don't see the Etolin here on the spreadsheet. Interesting. Okay. Well, we'll make it a transport or a transport task force. We'll put the Etolin there. It's possible that when the Japanese were here and ships scattered, if they were out in the ocean, they would have scattered. It's possible that it just came to this port, but it's odd that it's set with Lahaina. Well, so I'm probably wrong because Lahaina is set as its home port. So, okay, it's just not on the spreadsheet that way, but we're going to send it over to Pearl Harbor and we'll auto disband it when it gets there so that it just is in port and we can put it with whatever we want to put it with. Now, I'm going to do something a little different with these tankers. Let's see, hold on. How much fuel? Okay, we've got 610,000 fuel at Pearl Harbor. So what I'm going to do, and let's look at these tankers again now. This tanker here, 16 speed, and this really should be running for Pearl Harbor as opposed to the US West Coast. If you're going to take it all the way to Australia, now, question, the endurance is really light. We'll look at it when we form it into a task force. We will do these separately as well. So let's do tanker, done. Let's do the Gulf Hawk. It's got a good speed. Its endurance is not great. Let's just, for now, it's going to be tanker. And we're going to set its home port for now at Pearl Harbor. Now, if we do that, let's see what happens if we try to take it all the way to Brisbane. And let's just see how short of fuel we would be. Not too bad. It's pretty close. I mean, that's for the round trip, right? So 112 to get to Brisbane. We could do some kind of, we could just kind of do a minimal or a tactical refuel. Now we are going to be doing waypoints, right? So it's going to be actually quite a bit longer than that. But when it gets over to, yeah, I think that's how I'll handle that one. When it gets over to Pearl, we're going to fill it up and send it to Australia, at least the first time around. If we don't like that, I mean, we do have longer range tankers that are really made to go to Australia. My guess is this one really should be going from LA to Pearl Harbor. But for the first time around, we are going to, let's say, tanker Brisbane. Okay, great. And so when it gets over to Pearl Harbor, yeah, let's not get that. Let's not have it go to Brisbane that way. That would be a sitting duck. Okay, so we're going to go over here, send it to Pearl Harbor first of all. We'll deal with it when it comes into the port there. And then for the second tanker, the Gulfland, now this capacity, this endurance, this speed is made for West Coast to Pearl Harbor over and over and over again. We'll get a continuous supply going there. And so first of all, we've got to send it back to the West Coast. Let's do that. And so we'll say tanker Pearl Harbor, or tanker, sometimes I just call it Pearl, tanker Pearl. We're going to set the home base at LA. All right. And we're going to set its destination to LA. And we're going to send a destroyer out with it as it leaves. And maybe two, because we do not want to lose a tanker, that is for sure. Oh, it's shoot, sorry. It's got to get over, we got to send it over to Pearl Harbor first. So we'll send it to Pearl Harbor. Its home base is now LA. We'll tell it to remain on station so that it sits at Pearl Harbor until we put a couple of destroyers in with it. All right, so what do we have left? The Hugh Merchant. Now Cole is saying, so we're going to leave, we're going to turn those three ships green, and Cole is saying with the Hugh Merchant also take that over to Pearl Harbor. So we'll do a cargo task force there. The Hugh Merchant. Is that the Ho Merchant? Hoey Merchant? I don't know. Cargo, no real need to name this if you don't want to. Because we are going to get it over here and immediately disband that task force so we can put it with what we want it to be with. All right, great. Now then, man, time really flies by on these things. Just time just flies by when I'm talking and setting these up. I feel like, the hour's up before I even know it. As a matter of fact, we are at that time. I think we're right now, at about 55 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and call this episode. When we come back tomorrow, I'm going to get other things set up. When we come back tomorrow, we are going to delve into these destroyers here. We're going to get the ASW set up out in this ring, all right? And then we're also going to send some back to the West Coast. And so we are going to do that next time. I'll get everything else set up, and we will look at those destroyers, because I think it's a very important part of the game, getting the ASW here and on the West Coast set up, maybe early on, maybe your most important task. So we will be doing that. So as always, thank you so much for joining me, guys. I always appreciate it. Bayard, Stanley, P. Warner, you guys are my regulars, and I always am glad to have you around. I didn't talk about the comments as much this time, or even act as a travel guide for you guys this time. I promise next time I'll be a little more interactive, and we'll do that. We'll probably do a little more of it on Saturday, so we'll do it tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific, Saturday 10 a.m. Pacific, and then on Sunday, hopefully I'll have everything set up for the turn, and we'll see what happens in turn 6. But for strategy gaming,